Want to level up your leadership? Welcome to The Boss Coach.
A dash of cool, a splash of class. The Boss Coach leads, no time to pass. Oh, the Boss Coach, the leader's guide.
Hey, well, at least it's not a Christmas song, right? Hey, boss, how's business? Hey, how's your budget looking for the rest of the year? You know, are you cutting travel expenses? Do you have a surplus to spend? Hey, don't leave money on the table. If you do, I'll just send you my Venmo. No problem. Hey, thanks for clicking and listening. My name is Patrick McGranahan. Welcome back to The Boss Coach. If you're new to the show, check out Podcast Trailer, which is episode 100. Gives you a little background on what The Boss Coach is all about, what my mission is here, and what you can learn from me. And you know what? Spotify Wrapped just came out this week for the year, and it let me know that in the categories of fan fave, most talked about, and most shared, the Boss Coach podcast earned designations for top 10% on all podcasts for those categories. And there's over 4 million active podcasts right now, so that's not bad. Those awards are because of you, and I am so grateful that you listen. Thank you. And you know what also? There's only 2 more episodes left before the Boss Coach season finale. So that'll be 3 total before the holiday break. And then season 2 will drop in January, so these last 3 are very special, including today's. What makes today so special? Well, while I'm not great at it, I am a big fan of comedy. Stand-up comics, funny movies, you name it. And who doesn't love to laugh? Is that a tool for a leader, though? We all know that Michael Scott from The Office saw himself as a bit of a comedy master, but are we all really a good judge of what's funny and what's cringy?
Attention, everyone. Hello. Yes, I just want you to know that you can consider this my retirement from comedy.
You really think you can go all day long? You always left me satisfied and smiling, so...
That's what she said!
Well, as it turns out, there's actually a lot we can take from humor when it comes to leadership. It builds trust and approachability, boosts morale and engagement, relieves stress for sure. And even if you're not great at it, studies show that our teams will see it as a benefit even if you try. One of my team just let me know the other day that it really cracks them up when I break into bursts of song. I had kind of forgotten I do that, but in the middle of something, I'll just kind of start singing randomly. I can't sing, keep in mind, but it makes them laugh, and even trying helps, even if you're not great at it. And this topic is actually backed by studies by the NIH, the National Institute of Health. They cited 49 different independent studies, and that confirmed the theory that appropriate workplace humor improved morale, productivity, and retention. But it's not really just the humor itself. It's also the skills used by comedians and improv professionals that leaders can benefit from. Now, while I love comedians and comedy in general, I'm not an expert in the very unique skill sets. So, I've enlisted some help today. So I'm so excited for our guest today. He is a comedian, entrepreneur, a business professional. He founded Laugh.Inc., which is home to Laugh.Events and Laugh.Rx newsletter. He blends comedy, improv, and behavioral science, all my favorite things, to help professionals build up, creativity, confidence, and connection at work. He shows that comedy skills like listening, adaptability, and presence really are professional superpowers. So please join me in welcoming Kevin Hupschman.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thanks for collaborating, Kevin. Hey, right out of the gate, can you give listeners sort of your elevator pitch on Laugh.Events?
Yeah, absolutely. So Laugh.Events, we create comedy experiences for corporate audiences, and that can come in the form of entertainment, or it can come in the form of team building and professional development. Both sides of the coin are in the team building. That's kind of where the Venn diagram meets. When it comes to entertainment, it's, hiring a comedian or a group of comedians to do a comedy show, whether that's stand-up comedy, musical improv comedy, magical comedy, and it could be virtual, in person. And then on the other side of the coin, where it's team building and professional development, that's something we do called Laughing in Development. And it's where we do workshops and sessions where we are training professionals with comedy skills that they can take into work the next day and elevate themselves professionally.
That's awesome. Well, it's a great business model, and, I think everyone can be very clear as to why I wanted to invite you today. So you're here to help us level up our leadership through laughing and development. Kevin, as Kurt Cobain said, here we are, now entertain us.
Yeah. Well, that is, I think it's very funny. Every time somebody tells someone that they do comedy, the biggest thing that's most common that they hear is, great, you have a joke for me? And that is probably the number one thing you shouldn't say to a comic, because it kind of minimizes what comedy is. You know what I mean? Comedy is really not necessarily about just telling jokes. And that's why I think a lot of comedians aren't really scared of AI taking over comedy, because, you can have an AI tell you a joke, and it could be a knock-knock joke and have the rhythms and have the beats of it. But a lot of comedy has really little to do with the joke structure itself, and it has a lot lot to do with all of the different nitty-gritties, which could include like active listening, effective communication, pausing, taking risks, all of these different things that we teach our professionals that we work with. And, that is really what I've set out to do, is kind of debunk what people are talking about in terms of like comedy is just about dad jokes and puns and limericks and quick things like that. But in reality, comedy skills are these things that comedians are training their soft skills on and make them so good that they can really make something out of nothing.
That's fascinating. And I know I did an icebreaker recently at a meeting where we had, everyone pulled out ChatGPT and had it tell a joke. They were all so cringy. It was awful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is all very fascinating. So give us some tools to work with, Kevin.
Yeah, so I'd say like right off the bat, the thing that's most common about what people are looking for in our workshops when I say like, hey, what are things that are going to really be great takeaways? And I'd say that what we focus on are two things. One is listening. Active listening. And the goal of active listening is really for you to understand what's the person saying and what am I not saying? How can we make sure that we are really hanging on every word that the person is saying and not trying to get our own points in or our own points across? I think what's really missing in our world is an understanding that validation is kind of the key to any form of effective communication. And you can't validate someone until you have properly listened to them. So we play games and have these exercises that really focus on allowing you to hear every ounce of what the person is saying in order for you to make your next move. And so I always believe that active listening is really the foundation of any sort of relationship that you're going to have with someone, whether that's on the stage or in the boardroom. But if you're able to effectively and actively listen to them, then you can get into the next foundational element, which is communication. And that can be an effective communication and, most importantly, empathetic communication. And I think those two things are really important because what you want to do is once you've listened to them, you want to be able to tell them that you've listened to them. And you then want to use words that are going to be able to connect their thought with your thought. So it makes it more collaborative and it makes it a lot less individualized. So, you hear the common phrase in improv, yes and. And, that is what yes and is over a number of different interpretations of what it is. But the way I think of yes and is really a communication tool of saying, yes, I hear what you're saying. Absolutely, 100%. And this is now what I'm going to be saying. And that could be agreeing with it. It could be subtly disagreeing with it. It could be whatever it might be. It allows the person to say they're not using the words no, and they're not dismissing what I'm saying. And they're also not using the words but, which is another dismissive word, or, which is maybe not dismissive, but is pretty dismissive, but it also is very individualized. It's like, hey, we are kind of going about this as individuals rather than as a team. So those are really effective things, kind of focusing on those two foundations of listening and communication. And then there's another number of other ways you can take it, but those are the two I always love to focus on as a base.
Yeah, those are extremely valuable. And you touched on a word that my listeners hear a lot from me, and that's empathy and empathetic listening skills. Can you give me another example of maybe how you have exercises designed to encourage empathetic listening?
Yeah, so there's this game that we do called yes and, yes or no but. So everyone's going to go around in a room and they are going to pretend like they're on a picnic. And we're going to go through and I'm going to start and I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to a picnic, and Patrick, you'll go next and you'll say something that you're going to bring, but the words you're going to use are going to be no but. That's the first round. So I'll say, hey, I'm Kevin. I'm going to bring a speaker. And then you would say, no, but I'm bringing a blanket. And the next person would say, no, but I'm bringing a sandwich. And we'd go around and we'd realize that it's a really fragmented way to communicate with each other. And this picnic's going to stink. And the next thing that we do is we say, okay, do the same thing, but we're going to, instead of no but, we're going to now change it to yes or, and then add your item. So we'll say, I'm bringing a speaker, and then you'll say yes or I'm bringing a blanket. The next person will say yes or I'm bringing a sandwich. And again, you hear it's like, okay, it's getting there, but we have the validation, but this or word is really still throwing us off. So then the next thing that we do is we say yes and we change it to those wordings instead. And you'll notice that when people do that, kind of the whole room starts to light up. So I'll say I'm bringing a speaker. And you're saying, yes, and I'm bringing a blanket. Next person's like, yes, and I'm bringing a sandwich. The next person's like, yes, and I'm bringing the Baha Men on CD. And suddenly it's a party. And that is really the goal of that empathetic communication, because you're validating what they're saying and you're saying, yes, and let's build this thing together and let's empathize with what you're saying. You know, obviously it's very low stakes empathy, but these words that we use are so important. And it's a common thing I do to make myself remember and teach it, but it's no but or leave it at the door. And using the words yes and really allow you to say, this is going to be one of the most effective tools for me to empathetically communicate with another person. And eliminating those other words are going to eliminate the negativity or the individualism that can come from using those words in a group setting.
Yeah, that sounds like so much fun, first of all. I mean, anytime you bring the Baha Men into it, it's going to be fun. But, just how you're reframing the conversation and the narrative at the most base level to kind of reprogram the way that they speak and think. I think that's fascinating. So I want to hear more insights.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think that what's really important, I might butcher the quote, but Plato said you can learn more about a person in an hour of play than a lifetime of conversation.
I love that.
It was something along those lines. And what I did get right was the beginning part, at least. I know that. And the idea is that, like, when you are engaging with play, you are able to kind of let your guard down. You're able to be more vulnerable. And play can come in the form of a lot of things. It can come in the form of banter. It can come in the form of moving around the room. It can come in the form of just having a laugh with one another. There's studies that show that laughter can increase creativity, by over 35%. And, that is just kind of getting your mind in this really excited moment. And after our sessions, we just see that we're just engaging in so much laughter and people are really like bubbly and they're excited. And I think that is a really important mental state that people need to be in to feel comfortable and to feel safe. And I think that a lot of the point of creativity is also, especially when you can be creative by yourself and you can come up with a lot of great ideas by yourself in the shower. And I think that is, you're in your own like sort of mental flow state when it comes to creativity. But when you're trying to do it with other people, you need to make sure that you are in an environment that's supporting everything that you're doing. And most importantly, supporting mistakes. Mm-hmm. And I think that what people do to kind of halt creativity is, they might say, well, that's a wrong answer. And you always hear this like, hey, no bad answers, all good ideas, everyone flow them through. And that's an important baseline to set. But then what are the words and language that you're using to validate that you liked that idea or building off of it? There's another really great thing that people can do. And it's to start a project off by start a meeting and say, hey, what's right with this project? And you let people list all of the things that are actually going right with the project. Hey, we're working together great as a team, or hey, we created some efficiencies here. Hey, so-and-so had a great slide deck the other day. That was awesome. And we had a great call with the client. And suddenly you start to not just reframe all of the things that are actually going well with the project. You can start to think about unique ways of what you're listing. What you're engaging in is a certain type of thinking, convergent thinking versus divergent thinking. So convergent thinking, that is really what A plus B equals C, as I understand it, right? That is like, hey, this is like the answer to what it is. There is a right and a wrong answer when it comes to divergent thinking. And that's why AI is like very helpful for us, because we're like, we just want to get to the answer. But when it comes to divergent thinking, we a lot of the times need to be training our brains in divergent thinking. And that can come in the form of making those kinds of lists, where the lists are actually very easy to make because they're very low stakes. And what it's doing is training your brain in this divergent thinking, which is going to increase your ability to have more creative output in the future. And so those are some types of things where we can really increase our creativity, is when we're creating an environment where it's okay to fail. We're also creating an environment where we are just growing the ability to list things and listing things and increasing our divergent thinking. It's going to allow our brains to, when the time comes and we have to be more creative, it's going to be a lot easier. And it's not going to be, I mean, think about going to the gym, right? You have to start with small weights and then you have to build it up and you have to train that muscle so that eventually when that time comes, when game day comes, you're really ready to take on a bigger load.
Yeah, I really love what you said about starting a meeting with what's going right. And I already wrote that down. That's going to start in my repertoire tomorrow. So that's amazing. Are there any other exercises that you do in any of your workshops to help build up this ever important divergent thinking? Because I really don't feel like I'm good at this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that divergent thinking can kind of come in the form of any game or exercise where there doesn't have to be a right answer. And I think that's what improv is. And again, let me go back for a second and say, like, we stopped calling it improv because improv has a really, has bad PR. Improv has, people get really either intimidated by improv or they write it off as something that's like lame. And that's why we actually call it laughing and development, because what we're doing is applied improv and applied stand-up. We're using skills and exercises and games that improvisers, stand-up comedians, and all types of comedians are using to train themselves to be able to execute their art form better. And that is why we decided, hey, these skills and tools are very valuable, and applied improv is one of those settings in which we can hone those skills. And so that's what's really important, is kind of like taking down those barriers of being like, oh, improv is just for Robin Williams and the people on Whose Line Is It Anyways? Or, someone that's in a theater class.
Right.
It's something like that. And whereas if we start embracing these things of saying, no, applied improv is having each other's backs, and it is communicating with each other, and it's laughing with each other, and it's getting in a really good state with one another where we feel really comfortable. And so doing any sort of game and exercise in the improv category, in this applied improv category, and in what we call it laughing and development, it's going to increase your divergent thinking, because there really is no right answer when you're doing applied improv. There's a game that you can play called like One Word at a Time Story, where people are going around a room and they have to complete a story one word at a time. And they have to be on the same page, and they have to kind of mind meld with each other, and they have to think of the last word that was said and go into the next word. And when someone goes and makes a mistake, it's just an opportunity to change the narrative of the story. And that it's not over until it is over. And then when it is over, who cares? And so it's kind of this idea of like, I really believe that increasing divergent thinking comes with the safety net that you put in place, which is nothing bad can happen and you can't really make mistakes.
Wow, and how freeing that is. I mean, just by saying there's no wrong answer and you're able to just truly brainstorm, that is immensely liberating for a person.
And I think what hurts people is being like, hey, we're brainstorming now, go. Or it's like, hey, we're brainstorming now, come up with 5 ideas. It's like, well, you're kind of looking for the right answer when you say something like that. So what can you do to start off and be like, hey, let's name 5 movies that we love, or let's name 10 childhood characters that we grew up watching on cartoons. How do you kind of make lists that are really low stakes, and you play these games with one another that allow you to kind of keep this brain going? And then when you it just, again, going back to that practice versus a game, you need to practice with these low stakes environments so that when the game happens, and that game could be a meeting, that game could be with a client, it could be with your team, you have already trained your body and your brain to be like, I can come up with these ideas now that I've been put on the spot.
Wow, that's so fascinating. And I know that you said that, improv has a sort of a bad name sometimes. For me, it's always been, I've been a lifelong fan, but I can remember actually seeing, believe it or not, at Comedy Sports in Kansas City, Jason Sudeikis, before he was Jason Sudeikis, in that improv troupe. And ever since then, it's just made me think, boy, you just never know when the next big name comes out of that breeding ground for talent.
Absolutely. I think, improv is a really wonderful place for people to just play. It's honestly really an applied improv session it's a playground. It's a sandbox. Go back to those times, like you're just going and having fun, and there's no real rules to what you're doing when you're playing. You are having an insane amount of fun. I think there's like a crazy stat out there that like kids laugh over 300 times a day and adults laugh like under 15.
Oof.
So it's like just kind of thinking about, we put ourselves in these environments where there is very limited room for failure, and we have created that experience for ourselves. And so I think it's kind of as jobs as leaders and managers is to create those environments where people can fail in a low stakes environment. And I'm not saying like, hey, you can mess up with a client or you can mess up on this project. Like,
right.
Sure, you should have some grace in what they're doing, but work is important. What I'm saying is that you need to create new environments for them and train their emotional quotient and train their creativity and train their ability to effectively communicate, and train and really focus on improving these soft skills to make them strong skills. And that allows, when it is game time, for them to really execute on the background knowledge that you've done with playing silly games like the ones I talked about.
Yeah, playing is really the theme here. And it kind of goes back to your quote at the beginning from Plato about learning more from playing with people and just from laughing. And thankfully, you've given me more than my daily quotient of laughs already. So thank you. But tying it all back together, really, really love these insights, Kevin, especially speaking about divergent thinking, the EQ, improv skills. We have a lot to work with. You've given the audience so much. Before I let you go, though, I have to know, you have to have really one good story probably from your time in corporate America that you want to share from back when you were in that weird world.
The most important thing that I learned in that world was my boss at one point said, I was on a call myself. Like it took me a long time to kind of be comfortable with myself at work. I called it my 9-to-5 personality. And I would be this buttoned up version of myself that, very little room for error. And, I had a manager and we got on a call together and he was monitoring me and looking it through. And I was like, so what, when it was all done, he was like, what do you think of the call? And he was like, I need you to be less salesman and more Hupschman. And that was a really awesome moment that my boss gave to me of kind of giving me permission to fail and give me permission to be myself, because he knew what I was like outside of that call, outside of that office. And he said, I've seen a little bit of your 5-to-9 personality, and I need you to bring it into work because that's going to allow you to elevate yourself. And so I think that that's like my favorite story about talking about corporate America is, you have to have leaders that are going to have your back. And when I say have your back, I don't mean like stick up for you, but have your back in the sense of you can be yourself here. And the more that I encourage you to be yourself, you are going to be free to do really great things. And, you're going to make mistakes along the way. I'm going to let you get very comfortable with making mistakes. And the more mistakes that you make now, the less mistakes you'll make in the future. So getting very comfortable with yourself. And so I'd say that's kind of my favorite corporate America story.
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. And all the leaders listening know someone like that, and they know that they have the ability to give that experience to somebody just like your former leader did for you. So that's so great. Kevin, this has been awesome. I'm so glad to have you on, and the insights are really invaluable. I really encourage everybody to check out the show notes to learn more about Kevin as well as Laughed Out events. But once again, thank you so much to the great Kevin Hupschman.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Wasn't that an interesting conversation? When you saw Boss Clown, you probably were expecting this to be a silly episode, but we actually got into some pretty meaty scientific stuff. And it's all insights that you can use as a leader or just an influential member of the team. Speaking of using those insights, here's what you could do right now to level up your leadership using humor. Like Kevin suggested, this is really simple. I want you to start your next project or staff meeting with the question, so what's going right? That'll calibrate the mindset to start looking for the positive. You will see an immediate difference, an immediate change in the mood of the room. So again, just start with, tell me what's going right. Probably one of the easiest things I'll ask you to do all season. So please remember to look up Kevin Hupschman. His info is in the show notes. He has a great backstory you're not going to want to miss. Laughed Out Events is a fantastic resource for leaders who want to improve their team's divergent thinking and engagement. Well, thank you for your time. I'm Patrick McGranahan, the Boss Coach. Make sure you follow the Boss Coach on Spotify. Some platforms have you subscribe. Whatever it is, just make sure that you get notice of new episodes. Help spread the word for me. I really appreciate it. And remember to give me your comments too. That's what the algorithm seems to like. Just comment on this episode on Spotify or wherever you listen. Tell me when you've used humor in the workplace, either as a leader or otherwise, and tell me what the response was. Also, share this episode with your supervisor or manager or director. They will thank you. Well, until then, I'll see you next time on The Boss Coach. Back to work, boss.
Make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh. Make 'em laugh, don't you?
Thank you for joining us today for The Boss Coach, hosted by Patrick McGranahan. We'd also like to thank our associate producer Hannah and consulting contributor Stephanie. Original music provided by Sono AI Studio. All statements and opinions by our host and guests are solely their own observations and may not reflect those of their contemporaries or employers. Please check out other episodes of The Boss Coach for more valuable opportunities to level up your leadership. Until next time, I am your announcer Ava. Have a great day, and as always, lead with your heart.